pure coaching is the fundamental skill and technique that probably moves the needle furthest.
If you haven't got them switched on in 6 weeks, they're gone.
It's disproportionately more time-consuming, effortful, and expensive to re-engage someone that has disengaged, and the chances of it actually happening are so low.
Hey Ali, thank you very much for joining me again. Our last session was really amazing, and I'm really looking forward to this one on coaching. I'm super excited about it. I think it's a huge place where we can add value. And so I'm looking very forward to what you've got to tell us and what you've got to share. So over to you.
Yeah, Richard, thank you. Always a pleasure. I always enjoy our conversations and all the creative rabbit holes that we get down as we kind of bridge the gap between your skill set and mine. So yeah, as you said, we're going to be talking a lot about coaching. So just a little bit of background and context for anyone that doesn't know me. Obviously, my name's Ali Temple. I am a qualified coach that has also been through an accreditation process. I did that just in terms of my own commitment and pursuit of the highest set of standards in coaching. And over the years, I have accumulated many thousands of hours of coaching across quite a lot of different areas, starting from like the kind of mindset, mental health stuff. I was an alcohol-free coach, and then I've been deep in the business coaching space and online programs and things like that. And obviously held leadership positions in programs doing client success and retention and things like that. So I've really focused a lot on coaching skills and what makes the difference, what works and what doesn't work when it comes to coaching in the modern age. So I'm really excited to kind of get into it because this is something that actually kind of lights me up quite a bit.
Yeah, we talked the other day about the difference between coaching and training, and I thought maybe you could just dive into that and just give us some insight into what the difference is there.
Yeah, there's a lot of difference. And so in order to do everybody's time of consuming this content justice, what I want to actually do is wind it right back and really break down kind of what coaching actually is and what it means and what it does, and also some of the kind of mistakes or errors that compromise and contaminate the coaching. Because there's a lot of people out there that call themselves a coach that either aren't really coaches or probably shouldn't call themselves a coach. And in all honesty, it's a title that I'm actually quite protective of, because I think just about anybody in sort of business space that's pursuing success or their potential has probably engaged with coaching on some level and have probably experienced it done really well and experienced it done not so well. So what I want to do first and foremost is actually just break down like what exactly is coaching and what does good coaching do and what does not so good coaching do. Because if we're thinking about MLM and we're thinking about reducing churn, maximizing retention, this for me is the absolute glue that binds every other aspect of the business, of the delivery, of preventing churn, of increasing retention. You know, whether you're getting people to fall in love with your product and you're helping them grow as people in your network, coaching is the glue that binds everything together, and done well can absolutely compound and maximize everybody's results, not just that of the few. So if it's all right with you, Richard, I'm going to wind it right back and start from the very beginning of what I think people need to know.
No, look, that's great. I'm very looking forward to what you're going to say on this.
Yes, good. Okay, teeny tiny little boring history lesson. Many moons ago, coaching was usually, other than if you're in like the US and things like that, where it's like a soccer coach and a football coach, within the kind of more businessy coaching that we're probably all a little bit more accustomed to, a coach was usually someone that was trained, qualified, or even certified, maybe even accredited in some sort of coaching process that was client-led, that led a client through their journey to the results. Now, as we've kind of entered more modern times, the explosion of the online space, even COVID, where everybody, you know, that migration online was only accelerated. Now, pretty much everybody and anybody is calling themselves a coach. And in some sense, that's a good thing because coaching helps people. But on the downside is you've got a lot of people that believe they're coaching when actually they're not. And I'm going to pop a really quick slide on the screen here, because I do passionately and enthusiastically want everybody viewing this that wants to help people get great results, get themselves great results, but also get the people in their community great results. Is if you know this and if you conduct your coaching from this place, I honestly think it'd be a game changer for you. So if you are unskilled, untrained or inexperienced or just not coaching effectively, it can actually do a lot of damage. First and foremost, it can mean that your client, your person in your network, the person you're working with, for the rest of this conversation, I'm going to use the word client because client to me just means anybody that I'm communicating with through the lens of coaching. Obviously, there's going to be different names in different spaces for that. But for me, in the rest of this conversation, I'm going to use the word client. So clients can lose trust very, very quickly in the coach, the program and the product very, very, very quickly if so-called coaches are not coaching them effectively. Now, what's the reason that that matters? Well, if they lose trust, they disengage. More importantly, if they are being coached ineffectively, the experience is actually very, very poor. I'm sure yourself, Richard, and anyone listening can imagine a time that they were in some sort of coaching container or some sort of support system, and they went and they reached out and they asked for help, and maybe that person was dismissive, maybe they overwhelmed them, maybe they gave them a strategy that kind of conflicted with their beliefs or their values, but ultimately they didn't feel that they got the personalized support or attention that they felt they deserved. Therefore, they had a very, very poor experience. Now, if you have a poor experience with someone, how quickly do you run back to that person for further support? Not very quickly at all. Hence, that individual stops reaching out for support. And if that conversation goes quiet, obviously the relationship starts to fragment. That person is going to churn out of your network. Disengagement is public enemy number one when it comes to retention. Because actually, we think about churn. Churn's the problem. Churn's the byproduct of the real problem. And the real problem is disengagement. If somebody has a negative experience with you, if they've been poorly coached, poorly supported, they don't feel that the personalization or the understanding is there, they quietly disengage and silently quit in the background. It's like that relationship that you were once in where you really loved that person, that just over time you became kind of detangled from each other and you realized that you weren't really on the same path. It's the same thing that you just slowly disengage and detach from that person. And that's what leads to the churn. That's what leads to the attrition and the drop off. And so if we're talking about how do you use coaching to maximize retention, it's actually about engagement, not necessarily about reducing churn because that's the byproduct. Now, if a coach, and this is where we're going to start getting into kind of the training aspect of that, what a lot of coaches really are is educators. So they're good at teaching and training. They're good at sharing their systems or their processes. But actually, what they're very poor at is real coaching. And what that often does is they give that individual lots of systems, processes, models, information, and training, and say, off you go. You've got everything you need to succeed. But actually, what that individual needs is the coaching to extract what they need and implement it in a way that feels relevant and aligned and congruent for them as an individual. And so just because somebody's got that information doesn't mean to say they're going to go to implementation. And if they're not maximally implementing, they're going to get poor or short, low standard results. Then all of this means that that person is not renewing or retaining in the container. So, Richard, there's a boatload of information come your way. Let me know what you think of that, or feel free to jump in and stop me before I overwhelm everybody.
Well, look, from my perspective, you've hit the nail right on the head here. Because in the multi-level marketing direct selling space, this is one of the key things that they get wrong. You sign up 1,000, 2,000, 5,000 people. How do you coach those people? So the idea is that you have to coach the leadership to coach the people. And this disengagement, I think, is the number one reason why we have such high retention, churn in the business. What happens is the guy, we know from our data. We've got data going back since 2000. So we've got 26 years of data. If you don't get the person completely switched on within the first 6 weeks, so they join the business, if you haven't got them switched on in 6 weeks, they're gone. Yeah. And it starts with, as you say, disengagement. So they stop talking to you, they stop answering your calls, or they're out, or they're busy, or they're apologizing, sorry, I can't make this. And then slowly but surely you just see them, they're out the business, and then they never ever get back into it. The chances of getting somebody who's disengaged and left the business back in is 0 to nothing. There's no chance of it. So this idea of being able to coach them, to be able to skill them up, to get them to communicate with their their trainers, their coaches, and to help them break through that barrier within that first 6 weeks, I think is absolutely critical.
Yeah.
Absolutely critical.
It's disproportionately more time consuming, effortful, and expensive to re engage someone that has disengaged. And the chances of it actually happening are so low. Because, again, like using a relationship analogy, if you meet someone and fall head over heels with them and then they misbehave in some way, shape, or form early on, that relationship's never quite the same. It's like that mirror that's been patched back up after it's been cracked, right? And so the way that the business owners and the MLM leaders can think about this is that let's say is 6 weeks, and I'd advocate that it might even be even shorter than that in some situations. Is that let's call it the onboarding process is actually the second sale. And so, yeah, the training and what you do with them and how you get them up to speed and the on ramp is all very, very important. But actually, what's probably the most important thing is thinking of that as the second sale, as the second decision to buy, however you want to present and package that. Because those that have a negative experience early on almost always drop out before they get to a significant milestone or a serious term. And I've seen that hundreds and hundreds of times throughout the client journeys that I've coached in. The experience is so important because the experience confirms that they've made the right decision to get on this ramp and get on this journey. But if they have a negative experience, they think, that fear, worry, or concern that I had was right, and I should disengage to protect my time, effort, energy, money, so on and so forth. So very, very important stuff. Now,
So I was going to say, so practically, I mean, a new person signs up into a business. How would we go about coaching them to keep them actually engaged?
yeah, so the way that people often think about coaching is I have to help that person get a result. I have to help that person succeed or get a specific tangible outcome. And yes, that is obviously part of it. You should obsess over the results of your clients. But actually, the result is the byproduct of engagement, implementation, and growth, right? Is you actually have to be engaged. So you have to be coachable and reciprocal. You have to be learning. You have to be like on the journey. If you're not in the game, you can't really win it. So engagement first and foremost, because like we just talked about, disengagement is the absolute biggest enemy of retention and renewal. And then we need to have them implementing because implementation is exactly what you need in order to get the result. Low implementation, low results. And then, as I said, so right, let's look at then what I call the blended methods of effective coaching because coaching has become an umbrella term. Lots of people are coaching, but actually, like I said, some of them are just kind of teachers, trainers, or educators, but they're not truly coaches. So what I've found is over the years with my own coaching, and I've had my hand in training probably well over 500 coaches and pretty advanced coaching methods and models, is I recognized that there was actually these little kind of subcategories of coaching, and naturally different people fell into these different modalities that were either extremely good at one thing and usually not so good at the other thing. So as someone that has a background in training coaches and trying to be as good a coach as I can, is when you understand these different modalities and you actually have the skill to move between them or even combine them, that's what will elevate you from someone that can teach or train and maybe encourage and maybe help somebody get good results on their journey to someone that can be absolutely razor sharp, extremely precise, and incredibly effective for anybody that they work with. So these are, as you can see on the screen, blended methods of effective coaching: pure coaching, mentoring, consulting, and training. So what I'd love to do is to take a bit of a deep dive into these and take a real walk through, give you a bit of a definition of each, as well as the benefits and the drawbacks. Because like any tool in your kit, not one tool is going to do all the jobs. And so you need to be, if you're going to be an incredibly effective coach, you need to be proficient at blending these together and knowing how and when to change gears. So how does that sound with you?
That sounds fantastic. Let's give it a go.
All right. So first on that list is pure coaching. Now, pure coaching is first on the list because it's again talking about the glue that binds everything together. Pure coaching is the fundamental skill and technique that probably moves the needle furthest in any coaching conversation. Now, it's called pure coaching because it is a return to exactly that, the fundamental technique of asking people questions. And in doing so, when you really ask people questions about something, their problem, their challenge, their pain point, their options, their strategies, their beliefs, their fears, their values, what actually happens is they start to think far more deeply than they have ever had before about that. So you can think of pure coaching as helping that individual unravel their own ball of wool, helping them connect dots in a meaningful way, shining a light into the dark corner and the dark recesses of our mind. And it's pure coaching that more than anything elevates that individual's awareness. Okay, so what's the reason awareness is so important? Well, what you're aware of, you can influence, but what you're unaware of influences you. Right. So if you're not even aware that you have, let's choose an easy one here, right? Let's say that deep back there in the recesses of your mind, that you actually want to be incredibly successful, but your family conditioning is that actually money's quite evil and greedy, and to want loads of it is actually quite a greedy, bad thing. But you still want to be successful and you want freedom and you want to be able to make an impact and contribute. So there's a conflict there. And you wonder why every time you get money, you throw it out the door as soon as you acquire it. And let's say a good coach starts asking questions in that and identifying patterns and helping you just raise and elevate your awareness. And all of a sudden you say, you know what, I've never thought about it this way. But every time I start making more money, I hear my dad's voice, or I hear my uncle's voice, or my mum's, or my grand's, or I hear their voice talking about money, and it makes me uncomfortable. I've never realized that before. I've never thought about that inner conflict I've got between actually wanting to be successful, but always doing something to kind of sabotage it at the same time. Only pure coaching can create that level of awareness and clarity. And that's why it is so incredibly powerful. I could talk about the benefits of pure coaching all day. There's one more that I want to touch upon, and then we'll start transitioning into the drawbacks and the other ones. So, pure coaching is incredibly powerful, incredibly effective because it highlights blind spots, it elevates awareness, it connects dots. Somebody comes to me and says, "Oh, Ali, I've been avoiding doing this." And the unskilled coach says, "Oh, here's a better strategy or model to do it." And they go away and they still avoid doing it. They come to me and say, "Oh, I'm avoiding doing this." And I say, "Is that a mindset or a skill set thing?" And they go, "Yeah, I've got a little bit of a limiting belief. I actually feel quite salesy when I email people." Pure coaching. So the number one, or one of the biggest benefits of pure coaching is once there is a point of clarity and awareness, and there is a willingness to move forward, because we've essentially, as I call it, cleared the decks, we've removed the resistance or the barrier to progress, is the number one way, if you want people in your network, in your business, if you're a leader and you're kind of responsible for moving people forward, because implementation is everything, pure coaching, in my opinion, is the number one way to get more voluntary opt-in and a much higher implementation rate. So if you're in charge of people's level of results and taking specific actions and completing tasks and doing duties that make the business move forward, is pure coaching allows you to do something called voluntary opt-in, which is to help that individual find a meaningful enough reason that they would do something, even if it's not something they would naturally want to do, because you've got positive, healthy leverage, not manipulation, but positive, healthy leverage. That might sound like, under what circumstances would you be willing to do this? What could you do that you'd be willing to do? What um, how does doing this help you achieve your goals faster? Okay, now if you achieve that goal faster, what would that then allow you to go on to do? When it sounds like by doing more of this, you actually get more of that thing over here that you really care about. Yeah, that's exactly right. They don't get that through any other modality than pure coaching. All right.
But now, pure coaching is a skill. I mean, you are obviously good at it. Are you able to teach that element to a leadership team, for example?
1000%. I've taught this to leaders in loads of different industries, from super high up in property developing construction in London to hundreds of online coaches to people in the NHS in the UK. I have never failed to share this with people and it not be impactful in some way, shape, or form. The beauty of great coaching, or just coaching in general, is you don't really have to get it right. You don't have to be amazing at it. All you have to do is deploy the techniques, question, listening, and a couple of other things. And just by default, They do the heavy lifting for you. It's kind of like going to the gym and getting on the treadmill. Even if you do it poorly, slowly, even if you don't enjoy it, the physiological benefit is there. That's coaching.
Okay.
Now,
And could you teach coaches to pass that knowledge on, not just coach the people how to succeed, but coach them how to coach? I mean, because the big thing in our industry is train the trainer.
yeah,
You know, you can't, if you sign up 30, 40, 50,000 people, there's no way a single coach could ever deal with that. So what you do is you teach the leaders and you teach them to coach the people who teach them to coach the people, and so on and so forth. And it's a top-down training environment or coaching environment that permeates the entire ethos of the company.
yes. Yes is the quick and easy answer that, yep, this is absolutely trainable, it's absolutely repeatable, and it can absolutely work at scale, one with a certain level of sophistication. So, like a newer coach or a lesser experienced coach might struggle to say, well, how do I deploy this in a group environment? What I do, and what I've been quite effective at doing, is not only training people how to coach effectively one to one, but how to do it one to many. And it just requires a little bit of an adjustment, but it's absolutely just as effective. Now, one of the reasons that people don't commit to pure coaching is they don't think it's as scalable because they think it's just one to one. But actually, you can coach, pure coach, really effectively, one to many, as long as you've had the right training and you've got the right model and system for it. Now, as much as pure coaching is fantastic, it's not be all and end all, right? It cannot do everything, unfortunately. So, for example, talking about teaching, training, educating, is when it comes to pure coaching, you cannot ask questions and ask someone into knowledge. Like it doesn't matter how many times I ask you, Richard, if you don't know what my birthday is, how many times I ask, unless you literally go through every single calendar date, which will take a really long time, you're never going to know my birthday. If I say to you, how does gravity work? Unless you know that, have been taught on that or trained on that, you don't know how gravity works. So you cannot question someone into knowledge that they don't possess. So it absolutely has its shortcomings. One of the other shortcomings with pure coaching is it does take a little bit longer to work the system, the model, or the process. And that's what a lot of people sometimes struggle with. They're impatient. Now, actually, by trying to go fast, you really go slow. So if you just get into teaching and telling, well, you have to go do this and go do that and do it this way, you think you're getting there faster, but you're more likely to get resistance and therefore disengagement. So sometimes the best way to go fast is to go slow, to work this process, and that actually takes results on an exponentially faster journey. So it does have its drawbacks. And probably the main drawback is if people are not good at it, if they're not skilled, experienced, or trained properly in pure coaching, is they can very, very often fail to get to the heart of the real problem. Going back to the example, client comes to me, hey Ali, I've not been like emailing my kind of email list. And the inexperienced coach just thinks that that's like, oh, it's like I better give them a better strategy. I better give them better email templates. That's just got nothing to do with that. It's more their mindset or their level of prioritization. It's not a strategic thing. It's more of a clarity, confidence, or mindset thing. So it absolutely has its drawbacks. So that's probably quite a lot I've said about pure coaching. So unless there's anything else you want to touch upon, Richard, on that, or
Uh,
pull anything into it, happy to move on to mentoring.
yep, let's move on to mentoring.
Yeah, good. Okay, so we've got pure coaching. We know that that's really just a process of asking questions, loads of benefits, but it can't do everything for us. So the next one that we've got is mentoring. Very simply, this is about me helping you navigate the same journey that I done. So let's say had a great result, I've been very successful, and you come to me and say, Ali, I'd love to produce the same result. I say, no problem, I'd mentor you. I'll show you exactly what I did, how I did it, the way that I did it, and all you have to do is follow the same steps and you will get there as well. What's not to like about that? So there's tons of benefits to mentoring. You can walk the path that's already been beaten before you. It's a model that you can repeat or replicate. Mentally, psychologically, you know it's possible because you've just done it. So all I have to do is do what you do, right? And I'll get the same result. So it's really, really beneficial for a whole bunch of reasons. For the mentor, they can share, great stories and great examples that really kind of pull that person along. As you can imagine, there's going to be drawbacks to mentoring as well. Now, just because something was right for, say, you, if you're my mentor, if something was right for you, that doesn't necessarily make it right for me. Maybe the way that you did it was you made like 1,000 cold calls. Maybe I can't think of anything worse than doing 1,000 cold calls. Maybe you did something in a certain way, and that very same thing absolutely violates my core values and beliefs as a human being, so on and so forth. So there's so many examples of it worked for the mentor, but actually the individual doesn't want to repeat it. Similarly, if I'm having a really, really hard time and you're like, no, I actually found that quite easy, I now fall into a comparison trap. If I say, um, there was something there and it's evaded me, but it'll absolutely come back to me. So it might have been really easy for you. I might find it really hard. And then what can also happen is, as the mentor, I say, what did you do here? What did you do there? How did you do that? I'm then dependent on you. There's a almost like a codependence there. Now, this connects a little bit to pure coaching because pure coaching is great at developing personal responsibility. With the mentorship, I'm always going to come knocking at your door and I'm going to develop less of that personal responsibility because I'm wanting to be more dependent on you because you've said you'd mentor me. And rightly or wrongly, I've said, well, I just want you to tell me what to do and show me the path. And so mentoring can be incredibly powerful and beneficial because you can show them the way, you can tell them incredible stories about your journey and how you navigated things, how you overcame challenges, what you learned on your way. And that's really motivational. The drawback of that is it could compromise my beliefs or values. It could just not be right for me in terms of my mindset or my skill set. I might be more codependent on you. I might not actually develop the correct skills because there's no need to, because you've trodden that path before, whereas you had to develop and master the skills. So there's an absolute benefit and an absolute drawback to mentoring all at the same time.
And that's obviously, there's an area you got to be really careful when you're mentoring somebody. You can't sometimes put a square peg into a round hole. And as I presume, as a coach and a mentor and as a leader, you have to really meet that person where they're at.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's what great coaching is all about, meeting that individual where they're at, grabbing them by the hand, aka engaging them, and then nurturing them along that relationship. So it's guided, but at the same time, they have to develop the responsibility. They have to grow into their goals. They have to learn and master the skills and do a bunch of the heavy lifting for themselves while being guided by that coach. And getting that balance right is actually incredibly difficult. And it's something that a lot of people kind of fall short on is how much support and what type of support does this individual need to not only get the result, but get the result in a way that feels meaningful and fulfilling so they keep coming back for more. Because you can make people be successful, but in an unhappy and unfulfilled way. Just because they got the result doesn't mean to say they had the experience that they would come back for again.
Yeah, I'm with you. Can I just ask you something? Because just sprung to mind.
Yep.
We are very conditioned to do jobs. So we go to nursery school where we're told to shut up, sit down, face the front. Then we go to school where we do the same thing. You learn this at 10 o'clock and that at 11 o'clock in the morning. And then you go to university where you narrow your thinking right down to a very specific concept. And then you come into something like direct selling or multi-level marketing or running your own business. And where have you ever learned how to do any of that? And so I should imagine one of the big parts of coaching is to untangle that paradigm that you're not sitting there waiting for somebody to tell you what to do. You've actually got to think about what you need to do yourself and then go and implement it. And I'm sure the coaching has a big role to play in that side of things.
A massive role. I love this observation because what coaching is incredibly great at doing is not teaching you what to think, it's a process for how to think. A coaching led approach can mean that you can master any skill, you can solve any problem, you can prioritize anything in the right way. It's a system for how to think, not what to think. And I'm going to loop back to this in a minute when I talk about the training, but I'll sort of let the cat out the bag a little bit just now as well. It's not a knowledge problem people have anymore. Now, sometimes people need a little bit of additional information and training, and I mean a little bit. But if we live in the age of information, information is abundant and it's largely free. So this heavy reliance on teaching, training, and education is actually not the thing anymore. What the real thing is developing the mindset, the skill set, and most importantly, the implementation to get results. That's really where this is at and where coaching is at, because it's not in training and information that people really need past a certain level. It's knowing how to think, how to problem solve, how to prioritize, how to think creatively, laterally, all of those things in order to move forward and develop skills, not just learn information.
I'm with you, 100%. So that's part of the pure coaching again, also part of the mentoring, because you're showing the person the way, how to take the next steps. And actually, that's the mentoring is very much around what is the next step we need to take, I presume.
Yeah. Yeah. Mentoring, it's like, here's what I did, just go do the same things. So moving forward then on to consulting, because we've got pure coaching, very question led. We've got mentoring, just follow what I did. There's the path. Now consulting is a little bit different. Consulting is usually someone that is very much an expert or an authority, great proven track record. And consulting is taking a much, much, much more directive approach and telling that individual, look, if you want to achieve this, this is what you need to do. And I don't really care about how you feel about it. Doesn't make them a bad person, doesn't mean they're mean or nasty. It's that do exactly this. Very, very limited ability to maneuver around that. Now, loads of benefits to consulting. You can completely fast track somebody because it's just like, just do this. You can prevent them from making timely, costly, resource expensive mistakes because it's like, don't do this, just do that. Fantastic, great. I'll just do what I'm told. Now, as you can imagine, there's loads of benefits to having a consultant just almost saving you from yourself and just telling you just this is exactly what to do in this order. Don't ask any questions, just go get it done. You might move forward quite quickly. Now, the drawback, as you can imagine, now, if you're a little bit like me, that wouldn't necessarily say I've got a problem with authority, especially authority that's earned, but I can be a little bit of a rogue agent and a bit of a maverick sometimes. So if somebody says you can only do it this way, no matter what, just do it exactly like this, I have a little thing within me that just wants to step a little bit over that line. So if someone is very, very receiving a very consultative approach, it might feel overly authoritative. Now, most importantly, and this is actually a genuine thing, is that autonomy is actually a key motivator for many human beings. So if you can give someone a level of autonomy, even within a framework, so look, here's the framework. This is what I advocate for doing. This is the model to work from. But if you can coach them and give them a sense of autonomy, that comes back to the voluntary opt-in, but you'll also get more motivation from them as well. Because when we strip people's autonomy, if we strip people's freedom of choice, you'll know yourself, Richard, they bug out.
100%.
They get so stressed that a silly example of that is in an airport. People get so stressed at an airport, so you're going on holiday, relax. But actually, a lot of the time, if they're delayed, they've got no information, they've got no choice freedom, no autonomy, and you'll have seen it in the business world as well. If you too tightly constrain people, especially people that really want to grow or even prove what they can do, they're going to freak out. And so the consultative approach can actually be very valuable. Consultants get paid a lot of money because they know what was the analogy? The guy looks at the machine, hits it once with a hammer and asks for like 20 grand. And the person's like, how could that be 20 grand? And he's like, when I spent 19 and a half years learning what not to do, and then the next 6 months just doing the right thing, whatever the
Yeah,
analogy.
what was it? $1 for hitting the thing with a hammer, and the rest was for knowing
Yeah.
exactly where to hit it.
Exactly, exactly. And consultants get paid a lot of money because they should, because they know exactly what to do and how to do it. But if we're talking about how do you coach people, how do you coach your leaders, how do you help your leaders coach your network, how do you keep people engaged and therefore showing up time and time again? How do you get people to sustain motivation? If you have an overly consultative approach, actually, you can lose people very, very quickly. Now, there's a little sort of nuance here is different people want different things. Some people really massively value and appreciate the pure coaching because of the personalization and the experience, and they just get their socks blown off with like realizing all this stuff that they didn't know before. And it gives them a lot of freedom and autonomy. Some people love the mentoring because they like that little bit of hand holding. And some people like the consultative approach because it's very direct. Now, I'll be happy enough to share this. I was coaching someone, or thought I was coaching someone, very high level individual, very wealthy, very successful. I was lucky enough to be doing a bit of work with them and their team. And they says, "Hey, Ali, you're a coach. Can I jump on a call with you? I'm milling through some ideas." Absolutely no problem. Jumped on a call with them. And I thought I was doing the absolute brilliant coaching. I was asking lots and lots of questions. I was giving examples, sharing stories of how other people have done it. So a very pure coaching approach, little hint of mentoring, very small amount of consulting. And in the latter stages of the call, I thought, I'm losing this person. I've sort of lost them. I'm tuned into people enough to know that something's not right there. So the call kind of wrapped up and they sort of went off. And for the next kind of 48 hours, my spider sense was tingling. And I thought, I don't feel right about this. So I reached out to them and said, hey, like, what did you get from our session and how are you feeling? And how about we book in another session just to make sure that we wrap this up properly? And I didn't hear back from them. And so I reached out to them again and says, look, I know that how important it is to make sure that we continue this conversation and that you've got an opportunity to say anything that you want to say about it, because I get the sense that that wasn't as helpful as you wanted it to be. And they got back to me very openly and transparently, and luckily we had a very honest and open conversation and relationship. And they says, to be honest, I didn't really get the value from it that I wanted because I just wanted you to tell me what to do. Which kind of flies in the face of all the pure coaching stuff, but I'm adding it because you kind of have to know what people want and when. And that's where it gets a little bit trickier, because that's why I call it blended methods of effective coaching. What that individual wanted, because presumably very high up, very successful, time is maybe at a premium. They entrusted me to just show up and say, in terms of your client success, retention, so on and so forth, the best thing that you can do here is do it this way, and then get into pure coaching to help them decide how they're going to implement that strategy that I just proposed to them. So that was a really good learning opportunity for me, that you can be very mentory, you can absolutely be directive with your consulting, but like I said at the start, the pure coaching will be the glue that brings it together, and just give them enough voluntary opt-in, personal responsibility and autonomy to decide how to plug it in a way that is right for them. So let my mistake be your opportunity to improve your skills.
Look, in our space, that is particularly true because you're not necessarily dealing with people who've got a lot of business background, who are hyper successful in their business environment. These are people who are coming out of traditional jobs. These might be moms who have been stay-at-home moms for the last 10 or 15 years. So you're talking to people who have been conditioned to want to be told what to do, not necessarily knowing what to do out of the blocks. So I suppose a coaching or consulting, should I say, consulting aspect to it is very important.
Yeah, it is. And the drawback, because all of this stuff kind of gives with one hand and it takes with the other, is, and I've seen this happen all the time in coaching, is that you say, okay, when that person wants a consultative approach, or I'm the expert, I'm just going to tell them what to do. They go and do it to the best of their ability, but their skill set isn't maybe what it needs to be. So they don't fully implement, or they don't do it quite right. So the result and the outcome isn't what they hoped. You can only imagine what happens next. They come back to the coach or the leader and say, when I did what you told me to do and it didn't work. And so then you have a problem of trust. You have a problem of further implementation. You've just planted a disengagement seed that doesn't take much water and to bloom into something else. So that's one of the slippery slopes of just that consultative approach in the absence of pure coaching to support it and reinforce it and apply it to the individual.
And it's interesting that you say about this. I did it exactly the way you said. I ran a computer training college and I used to teach software development. And I'd remember I'd put some code up and I'd have the students say, I've done it exactly the way you've got it on the board, but it's not working. And I would say to them, well, if you'd done it the way I told you, it would be working. And I'd go and have a look at their PC, and of course they'd missed a bracket or they'd missed the full stop or whatever had happened. And it wasn't exactly the same way. So very often what you're saying is not what the person is hearing, and what you're intending for them to implement isn't what they're implementing. And they come back thinking, well, you told me to do it this way. In their head, they've done it that way. It didn't work. It's your fault.
Exactly. And that's why the pure coaching aspect on the back helps them extract what they need. It confirms to the coach, the mentor, the leader, it confirms, does this person have it or not? Because if you spend time saying, look, okay, these are the 3 steps you're going to do, and then they can parrot back 2.5 of those steps, you know that you've missed something. But if you just say, there, off you go, and you're not asking questions to back it up, that's how you leaders miss that someone doesn't fully have it or aren't ready to go implement this without some sort of supervision.
Exactly.
Let's talk about training. So we've got pure coaching, lots of questions, mentoring, I'll hold your hand, consulting, just go do this, and then training. Now, I already says some of the important stuff that we kind of really need to say about training, but essentially training is making sure that you're imparting the latest and greatest how-to information that has been proven and validated. A big problem with those that lean heavily into training, teaching, and educating is they watch a 15-minute YouTube video and they just go repurpose and try and pass it off as their own. And that is rife. People trying to teach systems, models, strategies that they have not yet mastered themselves. And unfortunately, we see that a little bit too much in the online space, the coaching space, the education space, is just passing off information that you don't actually know if truly works, and if it does, why, and if it breaks, how to fix it. So training, obviously important, right? You and I earlier today were talking about, you got to train people on the product. They've got to experience it. They've got to fall in love with it. They've got to become a disciple of that product. If they don't know the ingredients of the product, if they don't know the values that the product is built upon, they can't fall in love with it as quickly. So training is obviously absolutely vital. I'm not for a second saying don't train your people. Definitely train your people, because when you know better, you can often do better. The mistake, let's say, that is often made is too heavy a reliance on teaching, training, and essentially telling people this is what it is, this is what's up. Because in the absence of some sort of coaching or maybe even an element of mentoring, they're just holding information.
Hmm.
And we used to say that knowledge is power. I no longer agree with that. Because what I think is knowledge transferred into implementation is power. Because it's the implementation that produces progress, results, data, success. Trainers often rely too heavily on the information where I've taught them everything I know. They've got all the information that they need to go do a great job. And actually, they don't, because they can only retain so much of it. The trainer's probably over-taught, like I do, carpet bombed them with information. Just because they've got the training, they might not have the strategy that leads to implementation. And so actually they're just drowning in information, which really means that they're overwhelmed, which actually means that they become avoidant or procrastinatory, which guess what happens? Our favorite word, disengagement. And so actually what hopefully I am deliberately using the same language and word choice as I go through this session, because it all actually comes back to experience, engagement or disengagement, implementation, and how you develop the individual throughout those key touch points. So training important, but actually is only one of the vehicles to develop the individual. And at that point, I would then advocate for getting back into coaching mode and helping that individual take the training and actually do something meaningful and helpful with it. Yeah, so there's a kind of simple little model you can use to break this stuff down. I don't think you can get 100,000 people. Well, you can get a lot of people on Zoom now, can't you? But let's say it's certainly not practical or realistic to get everybody in different time zones or different areas. So the way that you can do this is one of the ways I like to do it is you can do live trainings, and they can be helpful for a bunch of reasons. But actually, the truth and the reality is that people often value and benefit revisiting trainings because they're not going to remember everything the first time. So, when it comes to training, something that's important is being good at distilling information, because any idiot can complicate just about any topic. So, simplification and distillation over complication and confusion. So what you can essentially do is create a series of online learning modules. Now, they should not be very boring, very content heavy modules that are 45 to 60 minutes long. There should actually be a series of relatively short modules that are interconnected, that are simple to understand, easy to action, and benefit and outcome orientated so that people understand the utility of actually doing them. Now, what's actually really, really valuable is once you've got these in some sort of portal that somebody can access, is rather than just saying, watch this, then watch that, watch the next thing, and going to watch that, report back, you'll get your instructions. What's going to be way more valuable is if somebody gets a kind of a short training that they can stay highly engaged with because it's short and engaging. Then after the video module, either or both is preferred, some sort of, I call it a series of coaching questions, which are really just questions that help with memory recall and application or relevance to the individual's job, duties, journey, goals, so on and so forth. Now, that also simultaneously helps them extract the value and apply it to their own circumstances. What you kind of do in that moment is you give them what I call the gift of the discovery. The training isn't the discovery. The discovery is the moment at which you realize that this applies to you and your goals, your needs, your wants, your values, and how you want to have an impact or contribution in the world. And you connect the training to those things, and a little firework in your brain goes off. And you go, oh, amazing. If I do that, it's going to take me there. It's going to give me this, and it's going to allow me to do that. It's very difficult to just get that watching videos or listening to training. But when you get a little bit of coaching, even if it's written, journaling, a couple of prompts, something with which to just extract what you've just consumed and apply it to your own circumstances and journey, that gives you a level of ownership over it because it's now taking you to the place that you want to get to. So that's the training itself, the coaching prompt, even if it's a written one, but you can certainly do it with a coach. And then the third thing is what I call implementation pathway. So you've got the training, you've got the coaching to apply it, and now what we need is the step-by-step guide as an implementation pathway so you know exactly what to do, how to do it, when to do it, and where to do it. Now, I'm not talking about babying people, but it does need to be beginner friendly and fail safe to some degree to foster and facilitate maximum implementation. So if I was taking a training or helping people create training that is going to help them take a top-down approach and make sure that everybody gets what they need and also knows how to implement it, that's like a little three-step model. Then what I would ultimately be doing is I would still offer, whether it be larger group coaching calls or even smaller siloed group coaching calls, is that's where the level of personalization takes place. So the training is for education, the coaching call is for personalization, because everybody will bump up against their own thing, their own stuff. It might be a mindset, clarity, belief, fear of failure, whatever it is. Everybody's going to feel differently and navigate that journey differently. So that is quite, from my experience of coaching and coaching in a lot of different areas, that system, that model, is actually quite comprehensive and makes it, most importantly, it means that people can't fall through the gaps as easily. So you keep people more engaged and you keep people developing more effectively over that, whether it's training or overall journey. So a lot in that, but that's essentially how I would do it.
And how do you stop people from becoming dependent? Because what we found in the industry is that the more you coach them, the more dependent they become on you. They stop engaging on their own, and they're now dependent on somebody telling them the next step or going with them or helping them or whatever. How do you stop that happening?
Yeah, so if let's again, I've used the word client, but if the client becomes dependent on the coach, I would be looking to audit the style or the standard of the coaching. So rather than being a spoon-fed, let's say, for a simple analogy, a spoon-fed approach to coaching, I would be really doubling down on the importance of developing autonomy and personal responsibility to help that individual grow into their goals. And if something didn't work, again, it wouldn't be like, oh, my model, my system, my process doesn't work. It would be like, well, what is it that happened that didn't work? Like, where is the gap? What are you missing? Where were you unclear? Where were you uncertain? What did you learn from this? If you were to do it again, what would you do differently? And so I would weave that personal responsibility into the dynamic as well as the culture of the coaching, but I'd also be using those very specific techniques, pure coaching techniques, to help that individual take as much responsibility, as much control. And then when they were successful, I wouldn't take any of the praise. So what happens, I'm a generous coach. I spend a lot of time with people, I give a lot, and I create quite strong containers that they can pour themselves into in a coaching sense. And I'll be quiet for long periods of time and really listen to them and really find out what's going on with them. And I'm lucky enough that lots and lots of people come back to me and say, Ali, thank you so much. I did that thing. It worked. I owe you so much. You know, like you've been incredible. I couldn't have done this without you. And I'm always very grateful. But it's also not true because the way that I coach is I'm getting you to find a way to do the work that you need to do and circumstances that you're happy to do it. So what I always say to them is, you don't need to thank me, but I want you to thank yourself because you showed up, you engaged, you implemented, and you kept going when it got hard. You need to thank yourself because you're the one that did the work. And so I always put that praise back onto them and I make sure that it's effort praise or quality or value praise as opposed to just like, oh, you're amazing, you deserve this, which is a bit kind of hollow and shallow in some sense. So that would be my approach to remedy in that situation.
Yeah, I'm with you. Okay, so from here, where to? You've gone through the coaching, the mentoring, the consulting, and training. What would be the next steps on this? Is there some sort of measurement, KPIs? How do you then continue that process on?
It's a good question. So I guess the next process is more really about what are the outcomes that you're ultimately trying to achieve? You know, like where or how or in what way are you trying to develop people? Because those outcomes, the goals, the all of those things will then inform what the KPIs are. Like what does good look like based on the goal that we're trying to achieve or the outcomes that we're trying to produce. So that's a lot probably a little bit of a vaguer answer than what you were looking for, but that's what the coach in me then goes to is like, well, where we go next is dependent on what you want to achieve. So based on that, you know, like what how could you specify or clarify in order for me to maybe give you something that's a little bit more black and white or more clear and tangible?
So I presume that with something like this, when you sit down with the client, the first thing you're going to be doing is asking them what is it that they want to achieve,
Yeah.
so that you've got a clear set of goals and a clear set of outcomes, which is how you measure whether this has been successful or not. I presume that is the approach.
Exactly that. And you hit the nail on the head because, and so here's the thing I always say when I'm training coaches is within the first 2 to 3 questions and within the first several minutes of any conversation, you have to ask, what would you like to focus on? What would you like to get out of the conversation? Now, this is a little bit more in like one-to-ones as opposed to group, obviously. Because if you don't have a goal for the conversation, it's not a coaching conversation, it's just a good conversation. So when we say, well, okay, we've got this sense of like blended methods of effective coaching, where do we go now? What's next? Well, what would you like to achieve? What's the outcome you would like to produce? Based on the goal that you want to achieve, what does good look like? And then we have to get into, well, what facilitates good things happening? But ultimately, regardless of the goal that we're trying to achieve and the way that we're going to go after it, what you probably need is a model. And models are incredibly helpful and powerful because it standardizes and systemizes the approach. The beautiful thing with models is you can improve them and refine them over time. It's not this set in stone, immovable thing that if it doesn't work, it just meant that that person was incompetent. It means it can evolve and adapt and stay up to date with market changes or people changes or things like that. So really, like probably the next step in this stuff is, well, what are you trying to achieve? And let's create the model that allows more good things to happen, where the outcomes are the byproduct of more good things happening. And then we can start to KPI it and systemize it and break it down and chunk it down into more tangible tasks and stuff. But certainly that would be my next approach. Yeah, there's probably one thing that I probably feel that I've not maybe touched on, and maybe I haven't in my own ramblings. I've not been aware of it, but I suppose the thing that I want to come back to is, you know, we've talked about some techniques and blended methods of effective coaching. I was just talking about models there. What I want to really bring it back to that for me is the most important thing, and I actually think the most valuable and effective thing, is that coaching is about developing people. So if you want to expand your network, you have to be good with people. If you want your leaders to do a fantastic job with the network, you have to be great at developing them as leaders. And coaching is sometimes something that people reject because they think it's time consuming or energy consuming. But actually, if what I'd say to people is that if you're in a business, you're maybe in an MLM business or you're in, you know, tech business or whatever, you're really in the people business. Because if your business lives, breathes, and even dies by churn or retention, like it or not, you're in the people business. And the coaching skills is the single best, most valuable way to interact with just about any human being, to give them a sense of autonomy and control and responsibility, and make them the hero of their own journey by putting them at the center. And yeah, like, you want to make money, you want to expand your network and stuff like that. But if you're great at coaching and great at developing people, great at lighting people up because they know that they're making meaningful progress, coaching people like that will get people to go so much further for you. They will go above and beyond for you. They will be so insanely loyal because of the quality of the coaching, the experience of the coaching, the way it
Mm.
feels when they're working with you, as opposed to just go and do this and you've got your targets to hit and I want you to do more of that thing. That's the fastest way to lose people, especially in the modern world. We know now, statistically, we've done the studies. We know that that's not the way to engage people, motivate people, or get people to retain and have a long-term, successful, collaborative relationship with you. So I wanted to just probably end on that, because for me, as much as all the coaching technique and stuff, I love it and I'm passionate about it. It always comes back to the people. And when you've got that going on, you'll do your best work with people that trust you, that enjoy being coached by you, that want to be led by you, as opposed to just that top-down, heavy, very directive, borderline authoritarian approach. You will never get the best out of people in that way, shape, or form. So if you're like me and really value those collaborative, long-term, successful relationships, then I passionately invite you to just see where a bit of coaching takes you. You don't even have to get it perfect. You don't have to really get it right per se. You just have to try, and the techniques will improve things overall. So I think for me, that's coming down to one thing. Of all the things I've said, that's in some sense the most important for me.
I just want to end off with something I said at my son's wedding. I did a speech there, and it just comes back to leadership. I said, I was talking to his wife as part of this speech, and I said, he's a little bit like trying to move a piece of string. If you pull it, it will follow you anywhere you want to go. But if you push it, it goes nowhere and it becomes all bent and out of shape. And so sometimes I think in terms of coaching, it's very much like this, is to be a servant rather than an authoritarian. Draw the person along with you rather than pushing them down a path that they may be not wanting to go. I don't know if that makes sense to you.
That makes perfect sense to me. I think it's a great analogy. I'll maybe even steal it for myself.
You're welcome to it. I give it to you as a gift.
Great,
Ali,
great
thank you
project.
very much. That was absolutely amazing. I'm looking forward to our next 4 sessions, which will be following over the next few weeks. Really appreciate your time here. Appreciate your knowledge and all of this information that you've given so freely. Thank you so much for doing this.
You are very welcome. Always grateful to be speaking to you and the opportunity to add value for your community as well. So thanks for having me. Much appreciated.
You go well.